Next In.
Welcome to Next In. I am Taylor Duncan. I got Shane Chown here. We are the co-hosts of this, everything that is Next In. Appreciate everyone joining. If you guys could, hit the like button or the share it and subscribe to the channel so you can meet with all of these technology leaders that we get to meet with. So today we are joined by, and really awesome, Jason Gilmore. So Jason, you are a friend of the podcast, right? If I'm not mistaken, you and Donnie are buddies, right? You work together at Xenon, correct?
That's correct. Donnie Hasseltine and I have worked together at a company called Xenon Partners for several years now, and have gotten to know each other pretty well during that time.
My understanding is you are stronger than he is, right? You're the higher producer, correct? Just we're going to put that. Make sure we record that.
I don't think so. Donnie's quite a machine. He's quite a machine at our organization.
You're like, you told me there was no agenda. Why are you doing this? All right. So Jason, I appreciate you joining us. So that's part of what you do, right? Is you're a partner at Xenon, but because of that, and some of that has stemmed into putting you in the CEO seat at Treehouse, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's correct. So maybe just a little bit of context there. So I'm a principal at Xenon Partners, and Xenon Partners is an organization that acquires SaaS companies, software as a service companies, and we look all around the globe, really, finding great companies with great products, and we acquire them and run them and build them up as best we can, and it's a lot of fun. That's how Donnie and I met one another. Donnie runs a company named Package Cloud, which I'm sure he spoke about when you last spoke. And I, after a several year stint at another portfolio company named Dream Factory, we had the amazing opportunity to acquire a company called Treehouse, and I assumed the role of CEO there just about 7 months ago.
Okay, cool. So before we get into Treehouse, give us a little of your background. I think it's always fun to we've got Point B running, Treehouse, and a lot of that came from Xenon. But what give us the route we took from Point A to B?
Sure. So I've been a programmer my entire life, going back to perhaps 7 or 8 years old when my grandfather bought a Commodore 64 for me for Christmas.
That is the computer I started on, Commodore 64.
That computer changed the trajectory of my life. There's no doubt about it. I lived on that Commodore for several years, and played games, learned how to code BASIC on it. And it was really from that point on that I knew I wanted to be involved in software in some way. And so I went to college for computer science, graduated from Ohio State with a computer science degree.
Ooh.
And interestingly enough, did not immediately take a job upon graduation. I was quite intent on doing my own thing and doing contracting work, and also writing. I was interested in writing, and so started contributing to a website which is long since gone, called devshed.com, which was one of the early online tutorial sites that taught you how to program. And they were big into PHP and MySQL, which at the time were relatively new technologies, and I was learning them. And I thought I'll never forget this, they had a banner up top that said, contribute an article and we'll pay you $100, and we'll contribute $100 to the PHP Foundation or organization. So I thought, that sounds like fun. And so I pitched an article to them, and that turned into 2 articles. It turned into 3. And I thought, wow, I really like this. I really like this idea of teaching other people. So when I did graduate, I kind of had it in my mind that I would do some contract work and continue writing on the side. And that turned into a book deal at a book publisher called A Press, and really kind of set the stage for the next 20 years of my career, in which I would run development projects, e-commerce projects, consumer sentiment projects, SaaS projects. But I would also teach people, whether it was through books or...
That's interesting. So now we're coming full circle from teaching and coaching to online testing and leading video courses for your kind of coding, programming, design journey, whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or like an expert person. It's like, how do you evaluate, test, and then now you're CEO of Treehouse, where it's like full circle from start to finish. That's interesting. It's kind of like that book theory of like how the story begins is how the story ends, and I'm seeing that with kind of your career projection here.
That's right. It was a both a very natural fit, as well as, frankly, a dream come true. I wound up writing 9 books over the course of the last 20 years and did a lot of workshops, but in the end, it's still catering to a relatively small group of individuals, right? So when the opportunity came to join the Treehouse team, like I was almost frankly mesmerized by this idea of being part of a team that could teach people how to code at scale to a far greater degree than I had been doing over the years.
So I'm curious, like Treehouse, because like at first my initial instinct was like, this is like a hacker rank where you're measuring performance, and then I was like, whoa, no, this is like a learning platform. It's almost like a coding boot camp that you can do with the interface of your computer. Like, help me understand like what Treehouse does. It looks like it's like a boot camp with nano degrees and stuff, but I don't want to assume things here, right? So what does Treehouse do?
So you're correct. Treehouse is not so much a hacker rank as it is an online platform that, to be perfectly clear, just teaches people how to code. It also teaches people about UX design, about product and project management. But primarily, our goal is to equip students with enough knowledge and hands-on experience necessary to go out and find a job in the tech industry. The tech industry, are short 8 or 9 million people, if I'm not mistaken, capable programmers. There's a huge hole to fill. And let's face it, for the overwhelming majority of programming jobs out there today, you probably don't need a college education. College has gotten to the point where it is absurdly expensive. I have 3 children myself, and although I contribute to their college fund every single month, it's still a big number that's coming, right? Should they choose to go to college. So Treehouse offers another route to that. It offers a route for individuals to become knowledgeable and experienced enough, whether it's through our tech degree or whether it's through one of our many very lengthy and detailed tracks. You can learn enough to go have that first interview, and you can show them your portfolio that you've built at Treehouse and hopefully get that first job. And we see that happen time and time again at the organization.
So when you see this, you're probably getting a little bit of a window into the world of what technologies people are most interested in learning, what they feel is most relevant, whether it's right or wrong. You have people who sign up and go, I want to learn React, or I want to learn. What are you seeing most people drawn towards in terms of technologies?
So we can answer this question in a number of different ways. One, because we have such a large user community, we could look at the metrics, like what videos are they watching? What tracks are they interested in? We could also look at what questions are being asked within the community forum. We could also look externally, and we certainly do that, to things like the Stack Overflow survey, which recently came out. And in all of those cases, we're really seeing interest not only from the student, but on behalf of employers in several key areas: JavaScript, Python, HTML, CSS, and databases. So JavaScript, of course, is a very general term for a technology that really has spread its wings over the past few years. That encompasses React, Vue.js, TypeScript, and many other sub-technologies, if you will. But I'd say the interest is very much focused within those core areas. Why? Because particularly in JavaScript's case, a lot of that's still new and exciting, despite it being a language. Most people don't realize this, that it's now 26 years old, 27 years old.
Same age as me.
Huh. There's still a lot going on there that interests developers. So yeah, JavaScript, Python, HTML, CSS, and databases.
So Shane, you obviously have a pretty big dearth of knowledge from the employer side, right? Shane and I run a technology recruiting agency. We have companies come to us and go, hey, help us find this and that, and all different engineers. Do you feel like that's a pretty good alignment with what you're seeing in the market today?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of like focus on just core modern open source technologies more than anything, right? I think that's kind of like core focus is modern architecture, moving into microservices, and whatever off the shelf, lowest barrier to entry technology to learn is what people are going towards right now. It seems like a lot of people in a lot of ways are trying to go, what's the most general thing that I can use that could teach me the fundamentals or paradigms to allow me to stretch my limits into, like, if I'm learning Ruby, can I learn Golang or another scripting oriented architecture? Or do I plan on working for a company that's doing more object oriented programming? And do I need to learn and stretch my arms in that? But I think the key thing is a lot of shops are looking for people that are agile and can move from one language to the next at the drop of a hat, right? And that part gets people pretty frustrated.
So Jason, how many students, if you would, like, I'm assuming that's how you kind of refer to your users, right? They're customers, but they're students, right? That they come to you to learn and develop. How many students are active on Treehouse?
How many students are active? I mean, the number, thousands and thousands of students are active at any point in time on Treehouse. Now, students, however, can be broken down into different categories. We have students, if you will, and I'll just use that term, students who belong to a private or a public corporation. So many companies use Treehouse for upskilling their employees, for cross-training, for continuous learning over the course of their career. We work with many nonprofits like Operation Code or Anita B, or more very recently, Prosper Appalachia. All of these organizations have an interest in their students learning tech in order to find jobs in the tech industry. We also work with many schools, middle schools, high schools, universities, and some of that, when you're talking about the educational side of things, some of those students are learning Treehouse as part of a rigorous classroom, in a classroom setting. Some, it's kind of like a value add. It's something that they do in their spare time for fun, right? So we work with students across all of these different areas. I would say, however, the majority are in fact there because they are specifically interested in finding entry into the tech sector, maybe once they graduate, or by way of a nonprofit. And I can't believe I forgot, I neglected to mention libraries. So we work with major libraries, I should say not just major, large and small, all across the country, who purchase Treehouse subscriptions and then provide access for free to their patrons.
Oh, that's excellent. Okay, so it's a way of, in a lot of ways, whether it's through the nonprofit, through the libraries, through the schools, even at the middle school, probably public and everything else, an opportunity for people to get these courses. If they can't afford it or whatever, they can still get a course that's going to help them learn, JavaScript, Golang, whatever they feel is most relevant to cracking into the industry, the technology space.
That's exactly right. Our goal is to provide access to Treehouse to many of these different types of organizations at low cost. We have a second goal of keeping everything within the browser, which might not be so obvious looking at Treehouse from the outside. If you are a student and maybe you've been given a Chromebook, or if you are using Treehouse for the library, maybe you're using their computers because you don't have a laptop. Everything that you learn inside Treehouse is browser based. And that's not to imply that the learning is like dumbed down because you don't have a code editor installed on your machine. We have these things called workspaces, which are virtual coding environments, and you start a workspace up. We support 12 or 13 different languages. A full featured code editor loads into the browser pop-up, and it has real-time error detection, everything. And you can code inside there without worrying about installing all of this extra stuff that not only can present issues from an administrative standpoint, but also, let's face it, can be very frustrating to a beginner. So we're really focused on that, ensuring everybody has a chance to learn tech, regardless of your economic or your financial condition, if you will. And we're very focused on ensuring that what you learn is going to be something that is applicable to the real world, right? You're not going to learn how to, program Teslas, right? Or SpaceX rockets, at least not today. We're very much focused on the here and now.
Got it. Cool. So what would you say as you're getting this window into the world of both sides really of the people learning and what they're going through, and I'm sure you get the different use cases and the different customers or students of yours and the challenges they have, whether it's finding the job or matching up the technology with what they want to do in the future, etc. You also probably see it from the employer side. You might even see it a little bit from the governmental side as to what they're trying to do to implement more and more to create a more technologically savvy, constituency or just community. What would you say is the biggest challenge facing right now the technology space as we are moving more and more and more every day into it?
I think this answer is easy, and that is to convince enough people to give it a try, to try it out, because it's not as hard as many people think it is. And I could tell you so many stories about why I believe this to be the case, but I'll give you two to perhaps better illustrate my point. One, I hope he doesn't mind me talking about him, our technical evangelist, Dustin Usay. So Dustin, 2 years ago, was working in a Texas oil field, and obviously a difficult job, and he got hurt. And if I'm not mistaken, the doctor actually said he's not going to be able to work in a like that type of labor again. Then COVID hit, and Dustin decides he's going to try this coding thing out, and he joins a Treehouse tech degree, graduates with flying colors, continued hanging out in our forums, answering questions, caught the attention of our student success team. Well, Dustin graduated, and like so many of our tech degree students do, Dustin went off and he got a job as a developer. And one of the very first hires I wanted to make after joining the company was, in fact, a technical evangelist. So I asked our team, I said, do you know anybody who's gone through a degree who might be interested in this job? Right away, they said, oh, Dustin, you need to talk to Dustin. Well, Dustin is this tremendously talented, not only coder, but designer. Like, he just has an eye for detail. And had a talk with him, and Dustin's now part of our team. And that episode really got me thinking about opportunity and the need to just give somebody the opportunity to try. We were out at a team meeting in Denver about a month and a half ago, and I was talking to another colleague of mine, and I asked the question, how many people out there are savant saxophonists or guitarists? Or how many people out there could be a Major League Baseball player? And my answer to that question is, I think, far more than you could imagine. And the reality is, those savants in coding or playing the saxophone, they just never were given the chance, or they never tried, or they thought it was too hard, right? I'm arguing that for so many people out there who think this coding stuff is too hard, it's too difficult, oh, only nerds do that. That's absolutely not the case. It's becoming even easier by the year, thanks to advancements in tooling and coding editors and the cloud, of course. It's becoming easier. And I would love, success for me at Treehouse is defined by the number of people who just give this a try. See if it's for you. See if it's for you, right? So that, long-winded answer to your question, but that to me is the biggest challenge we're facing today. It's putting STEM learning opportunities in front of enough people to help them realize, people who would otherwise never give this a try, that, yeah, this actually is for them and it's a lot of fun. It's financially rewarding. I can sit in my backyard and type away on my computer all day and write code. And I think that's a pretty good way to live a life.
Yeah, well, I will say the fact that there's a lack of people in the space keeps Shane and I busy. It helps us, because if there was an overabundance, companies wouldn't need us, right? So I'm kidding. So, but you're right. I think there is a lack of real good talent, and a lot of it is people don't try it, or in your case, whether it's the saxophone or baseball, they do it. They try it for a short stint. It's not it's not easy. They're not the savant out of the gates, and they just say, never mind, I'll go. You know what? I'll go write books. And then they try that and they go, well, I'm not very good at that, so I'll go do this. And they're constantly bouncing. But you're right. Coding is not an impossible skill. And there can be a lot of really, really talented people in it. And Treehouse, obviously could be a place where they can get that boot camp and start to learn and start to get, the itch to get into coding. So what could we do? Using this platform to get it out there for Treehouse, what can Shane and I, or our platform, to help Treehouse grow in your space?
I think a lot of it just comes down to getting the word out, right? And whenever somebody maybe mentions an interest in building an app or building a web application, or even asking the question, well, how does Twitter work? Like, how does an Instagram work? Well, why don't you give it a try? Like, why don't you go maybe take the Computer Science 101 course, or even better, the How to Code course at Treehouse, and maybe pull the covers back a little bit behind what looks like magic, right? It turns out it's actually not so magical after all. I'll give you a related example of this. My entire life, as I mentioned, the Commodore 64, right? I'm a child of the 80s. All my life, I wanted to learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube. And we take our children to a STEM conference, a kids STEM conference every January. And this year, lo and behold, there was a How to Solve a Rubik's Cube class at the STEM conference. So I demanded to my children, I said, we have to attend this. Do it for daddy, right? Do it. My children are all young. So do it for dad. So we're all given Rubik's Cubes, and we spend an hour in the course. And to be perfectly honest, I still didn't get it after going through the course. I'm still thinking, man, there's so many moves. Like, how do you do this? I'm up in Ohio, so cold winters. We leave the conference, and I'm just determined to figure this out. So I spend I think 2 weekends straight, basically holed up and sitting at the kitchen table. And I've got the iPad up, I've got the laptop up, I'm reading every tutorial in sight. And towards the end of that second weekend, I solved it. And I'm talking 16 hours probably between the 2 weekends to give you the idea of the obsession.
The truth is your kid solved it and handed it to you, and you're like, I did it.
Right. It wasn't like a pursuit of happiness where you got one car ride to finish it before you right?
Comically, my 9-year-old was doing this with me, and he solved it far faster than I did. My point is, now I can solve the Rubik's Cube in less than 3 minutes. And
give us the secrets.
For all the practice, just practice. Like, I wish I could give you some magical formula. It's practice. And that idea, and now I do it, and it's like, it's so, my son and I were laughing about this earlier today. It's so ingrained in the movement now that you're not even thinking about it. It's just internalized now. And my point is, what looked like magic to me my entire life, this Rubik's Cube, and I thought, wow, these people, they're geniuses. They're geniuses being capable of solving these cubes. There's really nothing to this that requires a genius or magic. It's trying it out, educating yourself, which is what I did online, and practice. And I think that concept applies very well to the idea of coding.
So you said, hey, help us get the name. How can people connect with you? And I'm sure you probably want to bring people on your team, as your platform is not exactly a simple no-code platform. I'm sure there's a lot of devs that you have working on constantly making better, and there's streaming systems and everything else as to make it browser only. How can people, if they're looking to be involved from a student standpoint, think about Treehouse, and B, if they're looking at going, I want to get into the ed tech space, I've done some awesome stuff, and I'd love to connect with Jason just on more on the building Treehouse, going through the same process he went through, which is I am passionate about the ability to teach, but there's a lot of ed tech platforms that have nothing to do with teaching technology. They're just teaching platforms, right? Sure. Whether it's teaching math or whatever. This is a teaching platform to teach developers. So people might listen to this and go, I love Jason's story of how he wanted to teach others and now he's come full circle. I want to get involved. So how can people get in touch with you or Treehouse or get involved, etc.?
If you were generally interested in learning more about the Treehouse curriculum, I invite everyone to head on over to teamtreehouse.com. You can start a 7-day trial. I promise you we won't call you, we won't bug you. It's pretty laid back in that regards. If you had questions about Treehouse or the tech sector or careers in tech, I would invite anybody listening to this podcast to email me directly. My email is Jason, JASON.Gilmore, GILMORE, @teamtreehouse.com. And I love talking about this stuff and would love to talk to anybody listening to this podcast as well.
Yeah, clearly, I get the sense of the passion behind not just, hey, it's a cool company, I can make money doing it, or we have an excellent profitability or anything like that. It's more the idea that, yeah, it's a cool company. It's a cool company because what we do is, in a lot of ways, we are delivering to the masses the ability to get in a career in the technology space.
That's exactly right.
And we work with boot camps locally, and so on. And we even work with, it's called the Entrepreneur and Innovation Center here through our the county that we're a part of launched that a couple of years ago. We work with the director of that, where they're trying the same stuff more in person, not an online version of how can we teach young people, students, to get more involved in the STEM side of things, to learn coding, audio engineering, video game design, etc. If we can do that at the ages of, call it 15 to 25, it's way easier than if they're 50 to 55, right? So it's that idea of like, the more that we can create opportunities for learning this stuff, the more that we'll solve the problem of the 8 or 9 million too few people in this space.
That's
But
exactly
you don't want to solve the problem too quickly, because then Shane and I don't have jobs, and that's not good. So
that's exactly right. And that your mention of the teenagers learning STEM, I think, is critical, because that's typically mentor based, right? You're going to have a mentor maybe in the classroom or maybe over Zoom. And I earlier I mentioned giving it a try is one part, and having somebody point out to you, hey, this might be something of interest. There is a second part to that, and that's telling somebody, hey, I think you're good enough to learn how to do this. And so it's great. Every time I hear about a mentor based organization who's helping out on that STEM education side of things, I get pretty excited. So that's great to hear.
yeah, well, Jeremy Qualls is awesome. He runs the stuff here in Franklin, Tennessee, or I guess the county is Williamson County, and just that same idea, the same level of passion towards making an impact, and like you said, telling these people, hey, you're good at this. Keep going, keep pushing, keep learning, keep practicing, and you can start building video games or start coding in anything from PHP, a little bit outdated, to Golang and JavaScript and so on. And that's, I think, fantastic. So let me ask some personal stuff. You're near Ohio State University, right?
I am an alum, yes, that's correct.
And you live relatively close.
Yeah, about 20 miles away, give or take.
So when Wisconsin comes to play football, you root for the Badgers?
I do not. That's been it's been a great rivalry over the years, I'll tell you.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, it's been pretty lopsided. So I played for Wisconsin, so I'm kind of a Badger
no
fan.
kidding. Oh, great.
So, but I appreciate that Ohio State at least keeps the Big Ten in the conversation. What is your favorite part of the Ohio State University? Which, by the way, I believe just got trademarked. They somehow trademarked the word "the."
They did. The. Favorite part, I would just say that the history, right? Just the history of the university, and obviously, and for good reason, Ohio State markets themselves, I think, unfortunately, a little bit too much in this way. Largely, Ohio State's gained fame because of the football team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody says Ohio State, you think football. But there really is something to be said about going down to campus and walking around. And, obviously the campus has been around for 150 plus years now, something like that. There's just a lot of history there. And, I'm sure every alum says the same about their own university, but you just kind of get a pretty good vibe walking around campus, and I really enjoy that.
Okay. So we'll give you the last question we ask everyone to see. I guess we'll find out. Are you really a nerd, a developer nerd? What's your favorite movie?
That's an easy one. My favorite movie is Rocky, the original Rocky.
I mean, that's kind of Shane, that's a boxing movie. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Well, I just love the fact that like the actual origin of that was, essentially there's an actor that wanted to get filmed and nobody would film him and just told him F off his entire life. And so he's like, F it, I'm going to make my own film and I'm going to star in it and I'm going to build it and I'm going to make this thing into something special. And at the end of the day, Stallone, like, he built all of that himself because nobody would film him, nobody would cast him, and he wanted something special. Right? I think it's impressive.
I love the movie because everyone, I think, who hasn't seen the movie, well, they think it's a boxing movie. And I mean, yeah, there is boxing, but Rocky's first and foremost a love story. It is a story of redemption, right? Of Rocky Balboa, who's I don't want to give too much away, I guess, about the movie for people who
I think we're past the spoiler alert, statute of limitations.
And who was kind of pinned down by her brother. Redemption for Mickey, who was, of course, Rocky's boxing coach. And I just think it's an amazing story with an amazing soundtrack, amazing scenography. even so, obviously, with all great movies, there are a lot of great backstories about how they were put together. And you were right, Shane. You mentioned Sylvester Stallone really hadn't made it big time at that point. He history is written by the victors, of course, but as the story goes, he wrote the script in, I think, 4 days, right, start to finish. I read something about the movie once. You know the scene where he takes Adrian to the ice skating rink, which I think is one of the most poignant scenes in the entire movie. The reason why he took her there at night is because they couldn't afford all of the extras in the daytime. Yep. So they changed the story up to go in the night. But I was just talking to somebody about this.
It was such a low budget film. It had literally no budget. He was just like, he was like practically homeless. He was just like, this is my one last hurrah before I just throw in the towel. I think the backstory before the movie even got created was the thing that kind of
wild.
The most, you know?
Like, did you know Susan Sarandon auditioned to be Adrian, and she was turned down because she was too beautiful for the part? And then, of course, Talia Shire took it. And now you look back at Rocky 1, 2, 3, it's like nobody else could be Adrian but right. Talia Shire, right? It's like impossible to even consider. So, yeah, definitely my favorite movie. Now, for laughs, I'll tell you, I have not seen any, I don't even know what you would call them, the superhero movies, the Avengers, and I've seen any of those. I actually haven't seen hardly any movie made in the last 20 years, to give you an idea of how many movies I watched.
Made a new movie in the last 20 years. It's mostly just remakes.
You might be right.
So you've kind of seen them all. You just saw them 20 years ago.
Other than a kids movie, obviously, here and there, I've seen a kids movie, but that's unavoidable.
Those. I do want to see the new Top Gun. Shane, have you seen that?
Yeah.
Was it good?
How is it?
Fantastic. Some people argue that they like it more than the original.
Whoa!
Oh yeah, but those people are all under the age of 35. So,
it is really good. It's unfortunate, who dies in the film is really unfortunate. So for those that haven't seen it, I won't.
Rocky dies.
Somebody dies, and it's I don't know.
Rocky dies. All right. Well, before Shane gives away a movie that has not crossed the spoiler alert statute of limitations, we're going to say goodbye. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Again, it was jason.gilmore at
teamtreehouse.com.
Jason.Gilmore at teamtreehouse.com. You can email him or go check out teamtreehouse.com. And again, sign up for the 7-day free trial and give it a shot. Go check out maybe the Computer Science 101 or the How to Code course and just get a sense of what the platform looks like. My guess, after looking at it, people will be intrigued and want to learn more. And that's the whole point, right? Is get them hooked, but not hooked on something bad, but something good, like learning how to work in development so that they can create a career or grow their career, right? A lot of them are in technology, but need to up level to the next step. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I love what Treehouse is doing. Any way we can help, stay in touch with us. We're happy to help, happy to have you back, in 6 months or a year and get an update on where Treehouse is going. So this was awesome. Thank you again, Jason.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Next day.